Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Opinions. We put the P1 in F1 Opinions. Is it Opinions F1? Oh, okay. Right, sorry. It should have been Opinions F1, but it's okay. I'll nail the intro next week. It's me, Harry. I'm joined with Ben. What a race.
My goodness. Absolute chaos and carnage, but it was exciting. Absolutely exciting.
So,
where do we begin?
We'll break down all the teams and how they went, but I have one question to open up with. Do you think the red flags, because there was 3 red flags in the race, which is a record. It's been a while since we've had 3. Do you think they were necessary? Should they have been done? Should we have stayed under safety car? Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, I mean, that was the big story of the race, I think. Number one is it was always safety. I think the safety is priority. Most of the time in the past, red flags come when there's a whole car on the track, it's in a bad spot, you can't remove it. I think the controversial bit with this one is that it was just kind of debris that really called the red flag. So the very first one was when Albon spun, hit the wall, and was kind of near the track, to be fair. But they actually looked at all the gravel, and I think they decided on that to call the red flag.
Which I think, from a safety perspective, I'm okay with that red flag, to be quite honest with
I'd
you.
agree.
Because there was a lot of gravel, and the thing is, when these guys are traveling 200 kilometers an hour, or however, I always get confused with miles and kilometers. How fast do they go kilometers? Like,
well, they get up to at least they're looking up like 180 miles an hour. I think that's almost 200 miles an hour is 320 k's an hour. So they're getting into the high 200s on this track. Yeah.
So the thing that you have to keep in mind is, right, if they knock up one piece of gravel into the air at over 200 kilometers an hour, that is essentially a bullet.
Yep.
It's dangerous.
It becomes a projectile, yep.
It's not safe. So that Albon red flag, I was actually okay with it. When you see the gravel on there, I know it's annoying. Like, maybe you could have safety carred it, but I understand them. There was also a little bit of debris around as well. And obviously Albon's car was like half on the track. So for that one, I was actually very, like, they were a bit like, oh, you can hit a safety car. I was okay with it. I thought there was a lot of, especially with all the gravel, I think it's better to be safer than sorry.
Definitely agree. And I think they actually, the corner he lost it on, I think that was either T9 or 10, but pretty much he was right before that really fast right-hander. So it was actually a blind corner later in the race, but it became a bit of a blind corner as well.
Yes.
So yeah, that was definitely the right corner.
What about the second red flag?
Oh, so the second red flag, man. At that point, you're kind of like, please no more red flags, to be honest. Especially if
what was the second red flag? Was that the K-Mag one?
Yeah. So that was, I think, Magnussen. That was such a weird one. He just went wide on T2. Really hit the barrier and hit it in such a way that I think it just launched his tire off, which then proceeded to just land and sit perfectly in the middle of the track. So thanks for that tire. But I mean, that one you could almost borderline say yellow back in the day. Like, they probably would just get someone to run and grab that. But these days, I think that was it was a big enough of an obstacle.
I think that one was a marginal. I think that one could have been a safety car. But I don't know. The other thing is, I don't know how, because obviously he drove for a bit before he stopped. Like, he drove all the way down the straight and then didn't stop until almost turn, because he was at turn 4.
He was almost at T3, I think, because he hit the right hander on turn 2, went down the straight a bit, and then kind of had to pull it over.
Yeah, no, he cut into turn 4, like the escape road area of turn 4.
Yeah. Yeah, so, he managed to limp quite away with that, his tire.
I think he was trying to make it home, and then they're like, no. So, and then obviously there was the red flag for the final start, which was an absolute cluster.
Yeah, so they red flagged the third red flag almost immediately after the restart from the second red flag, which I think was totally understandable. That was just absolute carnage. So I think that was understandable.
I think my problem with the K-Mag one was that they'd already done 2 or 3 laps under a safety car, and then they red flagged it.
Actually, I would agree with that. I think that was the issue, was that they didn't call it straight away. They let it go a while, thinking, okay, this will just be safety car, and then they called the red flag.
It was obvious that they didn't want to finish the race under a safety car, and then that's all like, oh, we need to do something, and they red flagged it. Whereas like if they had red flagged it straight away, I would have been okay with that. But the fact that they wasted, that was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, why'd they red flag it with 2 laps to go? Like they started with like 5 or 4 laps to go. They could have done something more. And I understand trying to make it a bit more exciting, but I think you need to make those decisions quicker. And I know that's difficult, but it needs to be done.
I mean, yeah, I don't envy the job of the race directors. I think it's very tough to make calls that quickly.
Poor dudes when they red flagged it the third time. So
oh my gosh, yeah.
I think
But that made a lot of drama, honestly, because
it's good because the middle was kind of boring.
I will, before we get into the teams, just quickly on the general vibe of the race. I didn't mind the middle sector. Yes, it was a bit boring because there went a ton of overtakes in that front half of the field. But the fact that everyone was close was a huge plus for me. And everyone was within at least 1 to 2 seconds.
And Lando and Nico were having a good race in the middle that sort of kept it a little bit interesting. And then
yeah, they had a good scrap.
So with a weekend where it was actually really, I actually really enjoyed the lead up because it was so cold, and we'd been in the Middle East previously. I think the teams were all really used to the warmer weather because Melbourne was on some days was like a good 15 degrees, which I'm sorry, if you're American, I have no idea what 15 degrees is to Fahrenheit. Just learn to read proper numbers, okay? 15 degrees is the right way of doing it. And all during practice, they were so many people were going off into the gravel, and especially, which was I think really surprising because Red Bull previously at other tracks had been really good, and last year one of their big strengths was getting tire temperature up really fast. But all over the weekend and during the race, even there was a couple of hairy points that the Red Bull was not as dominant as I thought it was going to be, as it's been looking so far.
Yeah, I think it was one of the few moments you see that Max actually kind of lapsed a little bit. Normally he's well ahead and driving a perfect race, but when he locked up going into the last second to last corner, turn 15, he was like, what's happened? This never happens. He's almost perfect. But yeah, just struggling to keep those tires in the window because slightly colder conditions than the first 2 races in the season.
And Perez, you could almost call him like an off-piste. He was spending so much time off the track. There might have been another issue there, but again, it's unlike the Red Bulls to show weakness. Even off the start, Max got jumped by both Mercedes, who were incredibly fast off the line, and he didn't regain the lead straight away. Once he got past, it was clear. But that sort of leads into the very disappointing qualifying that Perez had, where he just beached himself in the first lap. And this is a qualifying where people were doing 2 to 3 laps to get their tires up to temp, and Perez is like, nah, I need 1 lap, it's good. And then into the gravel, stuck.
Yep, end up paying the price. I mean, coming off a win in the previous race, that's definitely not the momentum that you want to carry into the next Grand Prix. But I think we've seen Red Bull start at the back before, and we've seen them carve through the field quite easily.
And he did pretty well.
Yeah, I think it was actually a bit of a relief that he didn't instantly make it up to a podium spot.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
no,
at least the rest of the grid put up a bit of a fight.
No, it was good. He definitely had to work for it, and I like seeing people work for it, and he moved his way up the grid and salvaged, I think, as much of the weekend as he was possible. That was possible.
Yeah, I mean, after all of the mess of penalties and the red flags and multiple DNFs, he ended up finishing in 5th, which is actually a really solid result.
Yeah,
I didn't expect it to be quite that high.
Almost half the field yeeted themselves out of the race. So
yeah, I mean, we ended up with I think 4 DNFs and a couple that technically finished, but that's only because of the count back of the last lap. They ended up technically finishing, even though they beached themselves, Debris and Sargent. But yeah, overall, I mean, Red Bull I think got about as much as they could from the weekend, considering they had someone starting in 20th. But yeah, Max looked solid, but not as dominant as he's been.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about? I want to talk about Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, Gasly.
What a great! I feel so bad for Alpine because they didn't do anything wrong. It was just Pierre went a little bit wide and then just did not, like, was trying to keep out of the way and just didn't see Ocon in his mirror. Ocon had nowhere to go. Pierre, Ocon was in Pierre's blind spot and they took each other out.
Yeah, it's never good taking yourself out, let alone yourself with a teammate. So, not the weekend that they wanted. But I think a lot of positives because Pierre was sitting in fifth quite comfortably for a good portion of that race, and actually putting some pressure on the drivers ahead. So, we haven't seen a ton of, terrible first Grand Prix for them with Esteban's penalties. A slightly better result in Saudi with 8th and 9th, but yeah, I think they're slowly getting there. In terms of the car performance, the Alpines still got some pace there, and Pierre's got some consistency.
I was really annoyed at the commentators because, like, the whole race, they're like, "Wow, Esteban's in fifth." Sorry, not Esteban. Gasly is in fifth, and I was like, "Hold up, Gasly's a good driver." It just
it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. Yeah.
I'm not surprised. I think, dare I say it, I think Pierre is better than Ocon.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. It's
just
interesting too because Ocon's been with the team longer, so you'd think he'd be a little bit more comfortable with their setup. Maybe.
I think Pierre is more talented.
That's shots fired, but yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree as well.
Look, I think maybe it is a little surprising how quickly he's caught on to the Alpine. But Pierre's always had a good race pace, and him being able to pull the Alpine maybe a little higher than what is in first initially expected, but I'm not surprised, and I'm like, that's the thing. If you can get Gasly to that spot, then he'll hold it. Like, I don't think he's he's good at management, and I think my boys, I'm expecting big things. It's just such a shame that they crashed out. I think Alpine can definitely be in the running for around like fourth. Like, I think honestly Alpine could be competing with the Ferraris and maybe even a little bit of Aston, because I don't know how often Stroll will be able to keep it up near Fernando. Stroll kind of got bailed out today.
Yeah, I guess he did a little bit. I guess that's maybe a good segue onto Aston.
Yes.
Because, yeah, man, first of all, Fernando, I mean,
still looking great. I love seeing, like, if Fernando finishes all year in third, I will not be upset. I love seeing Fernando in third, just doing so well.
It's good to see. I think this is the first time that he's had 3 podiums in a row since 2013. So it's been a decade since we've seen him at this kind of performance, and I love it.
To see him struggle so much in Alpine and to do what he has, and now he's just absolutely rocking it in Aston Martin, and everything that Aston Martin has kind of done is paying off to some extent. Like, it's just it's fun. Though, and Lance, like, look, they both stayed out of trouble. I thought Fernando's pace was really good. I was hoping that maybe he could pull a little magic and catch up to Lewis at the end, but I guess that one-stop strategy on the hards didn't leave him a lot of area. Like, well, the moment he picked up, Lewis picked up, and that was it. Like, you couldn't really close.
Well, it was interesting because, I mean, I think he was getting within almost DRS zone, and Lewis was like, man, these guys behind are quick. Alonso's putting the pressure on, but yeah, didn't quite reel him in.
You know, that's Lewis code for, I'm going to go, like, get a purple sector now. Like,
pretty much. But I mean, Alonso was so consistent all race until the last restart, the third restart, where he gets taken out by Carlos, unfortunately. Thankfully, after the deliberation, they didn't complete a sector in that last reset. Therefore, they go from the previous lap standings. So Alonso kept third. But I was kind of yelling at my TV.
I was like, oh no. Like, it was so bad. That's the thing. Like Fernando didn't deserve that. And Oh, you still there?
Yep.
Oh, cool. Sorry. Yeah, no. I was just like, Fernando did so well, and he didn't deserve to get spun out on the second last lap.
Yeah, but you can see how sharp he was, because as soon as he got spun, he's instantly on the radio going, like, look at the rules. We should be looking at the previous lap results. And he was straight onto his team with that. So he's sharp even under pressure.
During that last red flag, we even saw Lawrence Stroll come out. Like,
he's emerged.
He emerged from the den. But I'm so excited. Aston Martin, for me, is making this so exciting.
Yeah, it's like a new challenger has emerged,
Yeah.
really testing those top teams. So, and I mean, we were wondering about Lance if he can keep that consistency. Yes, he was bailed out a little bit this race, I guess. Ended up finishing fourth, and of course DNF the previous race. But I don't know. I feel like he's actually been managing the car pretty well.
Yeah,
I don't know if we can see many podiums from him, but as long as he's finishing that kind of fourth to sixth range, I think that's good
I
points
think
towards
that's
the constructors championship.
fine. I'd just like to see him a little closer to Fernando. I think that's the thing now, right? Is that obviously the Aston Martin is a decent car, but I'd like to potentially see him a little closer to Fernando.
Yeah, we've seen what the car can do, so now he has to have the ability to really push it to the.
But we'll see.
what it can
Look,
do.
top 6 or 7 is still great for Aston Martin as long as you're consistently finishing in the points. But I'd
Yeah.
like to see another place or two. But look, I'm happy to give Lance a couple more races. Obviously, he DNF'd last race. So there's still time to sort of see where things will fall.
Absolutely. I think we move on to Mercedes because Alonso, we said, was putting pressure on Lewis, and I think Lewis was almost surprised to be in second. To be quite honest,
What a weekend for them, honestly. They came
ups and
out of
downs.
nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, qualifying second and third on the grid was absolutely huge. Put them in a great position, and then on T1 after the initial start, what a start from George! I mean, gets into P1.
Just shot off.
Yeah, and then, I mean, it was all downhill for George for the rest of the race,
Oh,
though.
poor dude. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
before
the team made the right call, I think, when
100%.
when they had the safety car, pulled him in. He was ahead of Lewis, so they kind of gave him preference on the strat.
That was the
So-
1,000,000% the correct call. Like, the moment I saw the safety car, I was like, cool. And I saw him going in, I was like, yeah, that's a good call. I can't wait to see what he does on fresh tires while everyone else is on old tires. Like, that was, if there wasn't a red flag there, that was a masterstroke of a strategy.
100%.
Masterstroke.
But then unfortunately got a red flag, so everyone got a free tire change on doing all of that hard work with the strategy.
And
so
then his engine blew up, which honestly, I was kind of like, you know what? Maybe you just take that, because
I mean, yeah.
might as
it
well
was just
finish
kind
it
of
off.
Worse luck after bad luck. But that's the first time that he's actually had a retirement from malfunction in the Mercedes. So it's actually been pretty reliable for him so far. But yeah, I mean, the pace was there. I think that's a positive for him, to be honest. He looked very quick.
Did not have Mercedes looking competitive on my bingo card for this week. To be quite honest, like when they shot up at the end at qualifying, I was completely like, what? This is not something I had considered at all.
I think they kind of do that. They tend to underplay their performance a little bit, play the underdog a little bit.
They were like, oh, we need a new car. And then they get P2 and 3. Like, that's wild.
But no, I mean, yeah, Lewis drove a really clean race and just kind of held in there. Max was obviously too far ahead, but he kept everyone behind him. And yeah, solid result for them.
Lewis did what he needed to do. He managed everything and got to the end. And that's what you had to do. Do we bring up the disappointing case that is Ferrari?
I already know what you're going to bring up, yeah. Oh, I mean, it was just...
Unforced error from Leclerc. Science, not... Like, look, it was a tough situation. Do you think that the penalty should count for something that got rolled back anyway?
I don't think it should. It's a really tough one. It's kind of like in which order do the things occur? If I guess Alonso had been impacted by that contact, then yes, the penalty 100% should apply. But the fact that he got his position back after all that, it seems a little redundant for them to still penalize Sainz.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think that Carlos was... I don't think that was a racing incident. I think that was...
Could have been avoided.
Sainz was at fault there. From the replays I saw, I think he could have gone to the right. I think it was on him, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm sort of like, if it gets rolled back, I think maybe just give him a warning because it didn't actually impact things. But maybe the rules are the rules. I don't know how.
There's probably some technicality there, but it seems a bit crazy to get a penalty for something that technically didn't even occur in terms of the racing order. So yeah, a bit of an odd one. But yeah, I mean, it was
Ferrari
pain right.
Shocker of a weekend. No,
Yeah.
Discord, it's okay. No points for Ferrari this weekend, which is huge.
It's just crazy. They got disappointment on literally the first corner, and then it was disappointment at the very end of the race. It was just a nice way to bookend a horrible, horrible weekend for them.
Absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I mean, but really quickly, I mean the pace of the car was not quite what they needed, but Carlos was actually managing it pretty well. So I think they had a chance. It was just the penalty that killed them in the end to at least get some points.
Puts Ferrari in 4th place in the constructors at the moment, and they're quite they're on 26 points, and Mercedes are on 56, and that's taking into account that if Alpine had not crashed out, they would have Alpine would be a lot closer to Ferrari, I reckon, than if they hadn't crashed out. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Alpine can keep performing, because I think it could definitely be like an Alpine, Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin kind of battle, honestly.
Which is very exciting. Disappointing for Ferrari fans after last season. I mean, it was disappointment after disappointment, but at least they were like a strong second in the constructors. But this season, it's been a big step
Charles
back.
with an unforced error and beached himself.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough situation. Got the tap from Lance, but he didn't have anywhere to go anyway. So you've got to be more aware on that first corner.
Yes, I remember that. But sorry, not necessarily an unforced, but yeah, little tap. But yeah.
Yeah,
that was a racing incident. I remember that one. I remember looking at that and going, yeah, there wasn't much Lance could do. Leclerc just drove into him, didn't he? Off memory?
Yeah, well, he was on the left, turned in right, and Lance was there and kind of squeezed between Alonso and Leclerc, so he had nowhere to go. So, yeah, unfortunate, but it happens.
Sometimes I think it's gonna be a little look, I know I'm not racing in these cars, but I think you gotta be a little bit play it safe. If you think you got the faster car and you're confident, let the other car go past you and then take it back.
Yeah, it's a long game. It's not all a one lap sprint. So, speaking of unforced errors, Williams, double unforced errors with this team. First of all, Albon, I was really rooting for him this race. He was sitting in 6th at one point.
Oh, good. That car he was getting everything and more out of that car than what it should have been able to do, honestly.
Absolutely, was squeezing every bit of performance out of it, which we've seen him do before. He's managed to get way more than you'd expect out of that Williams. I think this track really did favour the car too, because they had a lot of just sheer straight line speed. I think you were mentioning he was getting purple sectors in quali in the middle sector, just absolutely flying. But yeah, just lost it on that fast right-hander. Hit the wall.
Might have touched a little bit of curb just before, and that unsettled the car a tiny bit, and then at that speed it was just gone.
Yeah, I think he caught some curb, but yeah, I think he was just as disappointed as the team was. But I mean, positive is that he was actually up there and kind of punching with the bigger teams.
And there's other fast tracks to come, so I think that potentially he could still get his car up into the points a couple more times, and just that's all we want. I don't expect him to finish every week, but I'd like for him to try and get, I think P6 is achievable on certain tracks. That's the thing. The Williams is very track specific.
Yeah. So I think we can definitely see him making some more points appearances. It's just a matter of getting the right track for that car. So we'll have to see what they can do.
Logan Sargent looked like he was in an F1 open lobby. Just didn't brake and ran in the back of Nick De Vries, which he's looking at. Look, I know he's new, so we have to be a little bit nice to him. But when you're comparing him to Albon, he's looking very underwhelming right now.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely looks like a rookie. I don't think he's blowing anyone away just yet, but I mean, give him time. Yeah,
pressure's on. AlphaTauri, kind of nothing happened.
Yeah, I think the only real hope for them was Yuki, who has finished the previous 2 races both in 11th. And the commentators were absolutely just hoping for that 3rd 11th in a row to make, I think, a record for the most finishes in the same position that isn't first in a row. But yeah, he was having a couple scraps, but the car didn't quite look up to it. He got overtaken.
Something throughout the race as well. I swear the commentators were saying that Yuki was managing an issue or something, so he didn't have as much power available as he should have.
Yeah, there was definitely an issue with the car, so yeah, he was defending a fair bit, but on the fast straights and sweeping bends, he just kept getting overtaken. So not much he could do there. And then yeah, De Vries had that incident with Sargent. So yeah, no points for AlphaTauri this race.
Nick De
Well,
Vries
sorry,
was-
1 point technically. He actually got moved up to 10th. So that's
Which-
one bonus.
McLaren stayed out of trouble this weekend, which was awesome.
Yeah, which was the name of the game really,
Stay
because
out of
that
trouble,
ended up
get
finishing
points.
them in 6th and 8th, which, I mean, considering they were sitting bottom of the constructors, that's a good way to get on the board, double points.
Nice to see.
Yeah, I think Lando was having some great battles with Hulkenberg. I think
Really
about
fun.
3 or 4 laps in a row, he was trying to dive down.
Oh,
Yeah, squeezing in
was
on I think turn 11. Couldn't quite get him. First couple laps would eventually squeeze past, and
I'm
yeah,
shocked Hulkenberg didn't get a weaving warning.
yeah, he did change direction a couple times, so it's
Yeah.
a little bit.
But
little
he got
dodgy.
him. Lando got him in the end, and I think Piastri did really well. And compared to Logan, I think Oscar's doing way better than Sargent. So just have to keep seeing. But that was a look. They kept out of trouble. They had decent pace. It wasn't amazing, but it was decent.
Yeah. I mean, considering
they-
that McLaren's certainly not a rocket this season,
No,
I think they did about the best they could. And home Grand Prix points for Oscar. So what a way to get on the board.
and Haas had a look. Hulkenberg was amazing, and K-Mag was disappointing.
Yeah, it was absolutely just a tale of two very different drives. I think Hulkenberg just did about everything he could with that car, finishing the points. But yeah, Magnussen was just kind of sitting at the end. I think they did try like an alternate strategy or something, but
Oh,
yeah,
they
it ended up
always do
DNFing. Yeah, I mean that's what you got to do when someone's right at the back. But
when you're low.
yeah, I mean Haas in the points, and that's what I love to see. I think the top 7 or 8 teams at one point had about 6 or 7 different teams. So very nice to have some variety in the points.
Hulkenberg looked amazing this weekend, and like Nico's come back from an extended break and is making Magnussen not look that great at the moment.
Yeah, he's definitely kind of outshining him at this point.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if that's just been a bit of bad luck on Magnussen's part, but yeah, Hulkenberg's looking like a big pickup for the team.
there's an alternate universe somewhere where they didn't reset the order after the third red flag, and Carlos Sainz got his penalty and Hulkenberg finished P3.
Yeah, as happy as I am, Alonso finished on the podium. That honestly would have been such an interesting finish. I think Yuki would have ended up in 4th somehow,
Yeah,
and yeah, Hulkenberg on the podium, which I would have loved to see a Haas up on the podium. So.
Haas tried to what do you call it? They protested the ending, but were denied.
Yeah, I mean, I think the rules were
It's worth a
relatively
try.
clear on that. Yeah.
Top 3, Ben. We
top
got all the
3.
teams, didn't we?
We've got to quickly mention Alfa Romeo,
Oh.
but I think it was pretty much uneventful. Bottas described his weekend about as perfect as possible. He said it was a lonely drive. So
There's
he was just sitting at the back.
no pace in that Alfa Romeo whatsoever.
No, especially after last season where I think Bottas finished in the points beginning of the season, and so did Zhou. So they're both taking a step backwards car wise.
Yeah, Alfa Romeo and Alpha Tauri just haven't continued to move forward, whereas all the other teams, I feel like, have a little bit. So
Yeah. So
Not really much to talk about.
Not much to say on their part, but I hope Bottas enjoyed being in Australia with his thongs and his mullet going. So
he can be our shoe in Australian. I don't mind.
100%, we'll adopt him.
Top 3, Ben. Who have you got?
All right, on 3rd place on my top 3 podium, I have Pierre, which is kind of a surprise because he did end up taking himself and his teammate out of the race. So it's like, how do you give him a top 3 drive? But for 95% of that race, he was driving really solidly. I think we've already mentioned that he's getting a good amount of performance out of that car, so I have him in 3rd. Who's your 3rd on your podium?
I have Lewis Hamilton / Mercedes because
Ooh, okay.
Mainly Lewis Hamilton. I thought he went extremely well in qualifying. He did everything that he needed to do in the race to keep hold of P2, kept that pesky little Fernando away. I thought that Lewis Hamilton exceeded my expectations for the race and really stood out.
Yeah. Well, that's a coincidence because P2 on my podium was also Lewis. I'm by no means a Lewis fan, but I respect when a good performance is there. And
he performed well.
I totally agree. He did exactly what he needed to, so solid P2.
Cool. My P2 is McLaren as a whole.
As a team, yeah.
As a team. They stayed out of trouble. They took That Lando was doing well. Oscar was only a place or two behind, which for me, like when you're one or two places behind, for me that's like cool. You're on the same par as your partner. So Oscar being close for me also like raised up that they're doing well. And they kept out of trouble. The strategy was fine. They really took advantage of all the chaos and got some good points.
Definitely agree. Well, funnily enough, my P1 is Lando because, yeah, I thought great drive considering the car hasn't been incredible. And honestly, the reason why I put him as one for me is just because I love to see good battles. And in a boring part of the race, they kept things interesting, him and Hulk. So, yeah, great drive.
And talking about Hulk, he is my P1 this weekend. I think that I thought that he was trash after the first race. To be honest, I was pretty hard on him. But he did really, really well this weekend. Really pulled more. Honestly, I think he pulled more of that Haas than I thought was possible. I don't really rate the Haas that highly this year. Maybe like a scraping in 10th, but for him to get a 7th, and look, there was a lot of chaos, but he drove a good race. Had fantastic pace. Got 10th in qualifying. Like getting to Q3 is, I think, always on a car that possibly shouldn't be in Q3. I'm gonna notice, and he held on enough to avoid the chaos and to get a really solid P7, which I think is big for Haas.
Yeah, that's a great call. Definitely agree there. Really quickly, my wooden spoon, unfortunately, is Albon, just because I had such high hopes. I think it was a tough error that really just cost him. I think if he just kept a little bit cool, I could have had some great points, but it wasn't.
It's a shame. My wooden spoon for today, or my so I have a first place wooden spoon, then I have a slightly smaller wooden spoon.
A teaspoon.
Honorable mention. But my bottom, I'm actually going to put Perez. I'm disappointed.
Okay.
I was nice about it, but when you have the best car, I was expecting at minimum. Oh, look, he got 5th. I was expecting a P3 from him, to be quite honest with you. When you're in the best car, you have high expectations. And if it was Hamilton or if it was Verstappen, they would have finished P3.
Oof, that is a really harsh call, but I mean, he was disappointed, so I think that he could have done better.
He has how the hell do you get caught in a DRS train when you have the best car with the best DRS?
Yeah, that's true.
It
does take more out of the tires to get up there, so might have had not the best condition tires at that point.
Isn't that supposed to be Perez's specialty?
P20 to P5 is solid, but no, I agree. I think you could have got more.
They were saying all weekend how the Red Bull's DRS system gets them more speed than anyone else on the straight.
Oh yeah, actually, we didn't even touch on that. They were flying by, like the other cars were parked. It was actually insane in Sector 2.
But like, there's a statistical, like, they have the best DRS. That is why I am disappointed in Perez. I think that P3 or more was definitely achievable, and he got stuck in the midfield and couldn't make the moves happen. And look, he did some fantastic overtakes. I don't want to. At the same time, I don't want to take away, like, P5 is still great. Good on him. But I think that they could have gone higher. And if you put Max or Lewis in that situation, they would have got the job done.
Yeah. I think it's a fair call.
And with honourable mentions to Leclerc and Albon.
Yeah.
They let themselves down this week. And I hate saying that to Albon. Albon's one of my favourites. But he needs to do better when he's got those opportunities.
Definitely agreed.
And
well, I mean, I guess that caps off absolute madness in Melbourne, I suppose. A wild weekend. A lot of red flags, but I guess a lot of excitement too. So we'll take it.
So excited for Baku. Like, just give me more. Like, it's the third race and I'm just like, give me more racing, please.
Yeah. Bring it on.
Please like, subscribe. Remember, we put the P1 in F1 opinions.
Stay tuned.
It's okay, I'll cut that in so it's closer. Bye.
Yeah, bye.